Hey, Rainier Avenue Radio listeners, we've got some exciting news to share. Rainier Beach High School is gearing up for a complete transformation, and the lighted construction team is looking for support. They're asking you to join their Careers in Construction Electrical Trade meeting Thursday, August 12th at 6 p.m. to discuss opportunities for students to learn key skills in their apprenticeship program and build the pathway to a fulfilling career. Register today at buildthebeachforusbyus.com. That's buildthebeachforusbyus.com. If you're looking for more information on career opportunities and updates on the Build the Beach Community Panel Series, again, check them out at buildthebeachforusbyus.com. And don't forget, register for the August 12th, 6 p.m. Careers in Construction Electrical Trade meeting.
Hi, I'm Mac McGregor, the host of the You Can Make a Difference show, which airs live every Friday at 12 noon PT time. On the You Can Make a Difference show, we shine a spotlight on people who are doing amazing things to make a positive difference in our communities and in our world. We talk about what inspired them to do the work and what inspires them to keep going, how they got their start, and how you can, if it inspires you, plug into their work. We can all do something that makes a difference. So tune in every Friday at noon to the You Can Make a Difference show with Mac McGregor.
Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic.
I'll take coronavirus for 100.
Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell.
What is staying home and isolate?
Correct.
Coronavirus for 200.
Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double. Take the coronavirus vaccine.
Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Av Radio.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Welcome, Seattle. This is Monique Lee from the Afternoons with Monique show. You're on Rainier Avenue Radio, and today I have the pleasure of inviting one of the running candidates for the City of Seattle attorney position, Miss Nicole Thomas-Kennedy. Please welcome Nicole Thomas-Kennedy to Afternoons with Monique.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fabulous. Well, this is the first time I have a chance to talk with you, but much ink had been written about this exciting race. Incumbent Pete Holmes has now conceded, and two new challengers coming on the scene, newcomers. So this is a very exciting race. It's probably the most exciting race right now in the city of Seattle, wouldn't you say?
Well, I would say, given that it's the one that I'm most focused on. But yeah, I think it seems like to be have the biggest upsets.
Right.
For sure. Yes.
So I learned that you moved to Seattle about 25 years ago. So, the beginning of the show, I always like to let the audience know a little bit of your background, where you come from, where you went to law school, what brought you to this race?
Sure. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from Iowa originally. I left home at a very early age, at age 15. And I was kind of rootless for a long time until I moved to Seattle in 1996. Mm-hmm. And it was really in Seattle that, I really didn't anticipate staying here. I really kind of thought I'll just have this rootless lifestyle. and just like go from city to city or something like that. But Seattle, there's just so many wonderful things about the city. And when I thought about moving on, it was kind of like, to where? I mean, we really kind of have everything here. And so, like I really, it got a hold of me, I want to say, like,
So
more than a consciousness. Yeah.
25 years ago. Wow.
Yes.
That's a long time. So did you go to school here, college? Tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I eventually did go to school here. So when I first came here, I worked in a lot of bars and restaurants. And back then Seattle was very livable. And, I managed to like make a decent enough living that I had time to go to school. And I found like I had my own apartment. I kind of had this like stability that I hadn't had before.
Right.
So I was a high school dropout, but I got my GED at Seattle Central Community College. And it was really central. I mean, it was community college back then. I think it's Seattle College now, but that was really pivotal for me. I had some super amazing teachers there. And I learned critical thinking for the first time, and was able to really put my own experience of the world in perspective with something larger that was happening. And it was just really eye-opening for me. And so from there, I went on to UW. I got a degree in anthropology there. And then I went to law school at Seattle U.
Right.
And
sorry.
Go ahead.
What year did you go to law school? When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2016. So just 5 years ago. Yes.
Wow.
So I spent about 20 years waiting tables in this town and going to school. And I have a daughter and just sort of living life. And then it was much later in life that I said, you know what? I think I'm ready to do something else.
Right. Now, you and I actually know some people in common. I talked to Mark Stenschever last night.
Oh, nice.
Of all people. And I said, what do you know Nicole Thomas-Kennedy? She's running for the city attorney position. And he said, yeah, she interned in my office. We trained her.
Yes.
Isn't that what an interesting coincidence that is?
It is, but I find the longer I live here, Seattle is so small. That it really is very, very small. So I guess it's not that surprising, but that's nice. I love Mark; he's great. But yeah, I learned a lot working there.
Right. When you went to work for ACA?
I went to work for TDA. I eventually worked for TDA. Mark is with Scrap though, so I did a lot of my interning at Scrap.
Oh, right. Scrap. Okay. So you were a public defender at Scrap. And I believe that all the public defenders agency were consolidated into Scraps. Is that right at some point?
No, there's actually the umbrella organization is the Department of Public Defense. And so Scrap, TDA, ACA, and Northwest Defenders is the other one. We're all under the Department of Public Defense umbrella. So I interned at Scrap, then I got hired by TDA, but then we're all kind of under this same umbrella.
Well, in my past life, I managed the 403B for Northwest Public Defenders. So, yeah, I know a lot of public defenders folks over there. And now I'm a radio show host.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's talk about your platform. I know that there are a lot of conversation online about your position and Ann Davidson position. It seemed polar opposite in terms of political spectrum. You're fairly new to the legal community and 5 years in the law community. Have you held any supervisory position? Consider the city of Seattle has 100 attorneys and about 200 staff, according to their website. How do you plan to manage these more senior, very educated, probably more experienced than you in this position? How will you handle that?
Well, so I think there's a big difference between, I've not been in a legal supervisory capacity, but there is, I think, a big difference between the civil division and the criminal division. The criminal division, there are some lawyers that have more experience than I do, but there is a lot of like younger lawyers there as well. And I see a complete revamping of the criminal division. So that's a completely different thing. But as far as the civil division goes, there are some very educated, wonderful people that work on that side. And I see the role of leadership as being more like setting policy, direction, and guideline, not so much micromanaging, different things, just really like bringing like the ideas together and capitalizing on the experience and education that is there. I don't find that intimidating. I find that really encouraging.
I see. And the other question is that most of your experience have been in, I believe, criminal side of things. And the city of Seattle handle many legal cases such as civil, torts and contracts, public records requests, environmental and land use, municipal finance and taxes and employments and utilities. There's so many different aspects of the city attorney office that you have to handle that you may not have had any exposure to in the past. How do you plan to catch up to speed?
Well, I mean, I did go to law school, and in law school, we don't get to just focus on criminal law. I had to learn all of it. So I do have that education already. I also did do some eviction defense and do some housing work as well. But I think that like one of the great things about becoming a lawyer, at least for me, is you have a law degree, you learn all of these things in law school, but then you can take it any direction that you really want to, And so, but that there are no lawyers. I was really thinking that when I came out of law school, I'm like, oh, I know how to practice a certain area of law now, and that's what I'll do. But it's not really, that's why you see a lawyer's office that's like filled with books, because there's no way you're going to keep all of that knowledge in your head. So every single time there is an approach to litigation, it requires a lot of research and a lot of collaboration. And it's hugely beneficial to have people in the office with that experience. But I think not having that specific experience doesn't foreclose any lawyer from learning how to do that law or learning how to direct how that law is being done.
That's a great answer. I did not think of that angle, the fact that you are leveraging other attorneys, the existing team there, to go off of their experience and set policies. That's very interesting. You advocating to defund the Seattle Police Department. Tell us, what does that mean to you from a policy and budget standpoint?
Well, I mean, so from a budget standpoint, like I don't get to make decisions about the police budget, of course. But from what I see my role in that being is, one, if we're going to if I'm not going to prosecute a lot of the things that end up in municipal court, that's going to really trim the budget for the police department. If we're not prosecuting John stings, for instance, that's thousands and thousands of dollars are spent on these sorts of stings that we don't need to spend that money anymore. It can be spent elsewhere. And I think the work of abolition itself is, I know everyone has this, or not everyone, but a lot of people have this, they hear the word and they think like of the Purge or the Thunderdome or like something really terrifying. But the work of abolition isn't to just abolish and do nothing else. The work of abolition is building up community-based support systems and accountability systems that really decrease our need for police altogether. So if the city attorney's office is, instead of making problems worse, creating homelessness through petty prosecution, if we're actually meeting people's needs, those behaviors are going to reduce. We're going to have a reduced need for police. It's really not about, it's not about just simply cutting police because we don't like them. It's more about I think there's other ways that we can deal with these problems. But part of the issue is we've put all our eggs in this basket, right? There's the money that we spend on police is really astronomical. And the question is is that a good investment? And I think that a lot of people are waking up to the idea that maybe, no, it's not. Maybe we could be spending money on housing, healthcare, feeding people, making sure people have available mental health care, making sure people can get into treatment when they want to. And those things are actually going to have much better long-term benefits for everyone rather than just focusing and funding police alone. And it's a process.
Well, it sounds great. But let me ask you this. We have an issue with homelessness here. We have last summer during quarantine, we have problems with rioting downtown, with breaking into windows of big department stores, with destruction of the city. And it seemed to go unpunished. And your proposal is to not prosecute some of the violence crime or abolish certain means to prosecute them. Am I correct? I just want to hear you articulate what part of that abolition plan or policy would remove what part of the criminal division away. It seems like without articulating the details of what would be removed and what would stay, people seem to have a real confusion about how we're going to take some of the problems away. The problems with theft and vandalism in the city is rampant and no prosecution or that I know of. On Neighbor, the app, people constantly talk about crimes going unpunished. Neighbors are real upset about this. How will you address it if you take away some of this? And I'll touch on the domestic violence issue as well. If you take away prosecuting some of the violence crimes, how will those women problems be addressed? So let's talk about the homelessness and the vandalism and the crime that happens in the city. Do you plan to prosecute those? If
well,
you were elected.
It really depends. First of all, some of the stuff that you're talking about is not, so the city attorney's office only deals with misdemeanors. So misdemeanors are low level crimes. Like you can't send someone to prison for a misdemeanor. The maximum sentence is less than a year. And so like a lot of the stuff that people talk about, whether it's catalytic converter thefts or broken department store windows or things like that, those would be at a felony level. Those aren't at a misdemeanor level already to begin with. And I mean, not to get out of my lane, but I'm not so sure that a lot of those things are going unpunished. Like I think a lot of those things are like actually being pursued. But that's not my affair, Right. So, and I think that things like home break-ins and stuff like that, those are also felonies. So that's a different thing as well. So most of the stuff that I'm talking about is really petty crime. And so I think that the question is what we are doing right now working? And so when I hear downtown businesses talk about shoplifting, they're concerned because it's a problem and it's ongoing. And it's not, what we're doing right now isn't working. And what I see is, and I think for coming from the public defense side, like maybe I see some things that other people don't see. But when there's someone that's prosecuted for shoplifting something minor and they are either living paycheck to paycheck or living in a car or living unsheltered on the street, their situation gets demonstrably worse, which leads to more desperate circumstances. And so understanding that like the short-term goal of punishment is like something that it's like something that we've all been taught is what works. But sometimes the situation is so dire that that's not what works. And so the people that are prosecuted in Seattle Municipal Court, 90% of them are impoverished enough to qualify for a public defender. So what is the social value in prosecuting someone that's hungry for stealing a sandwich when that costs $15,000 to prosecute and jail someone for that? What if we took a different approach where we made sure that people could actually eat and have food available to them, and we set up a fund, like a victims' compensation fund, or some other way that businesses can recover for their losses? Because the other thing that people don't know is the businesses that like do have their cases prosecuted are usually bigger stores that have high definition security, that have loss prevention officers and things of that nature. If you're a small business owner and you don't have those things, the city has to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
And if no one was caught and there's no video, that makes it a lot harder. So really, when we talk about prosecuting crimes, we're talking about prosecuting on behalf of goodwill, on behalf of Target, with the idea being that if we prosecute shoplifters there, it'll deter shoplifters everywhere. But it's not working because, like, the number one, the people we're prosecuting are so poor that they can't get their basic needs met, which there's nothing about prosecuting a hungry person that makes them less hungry. It just doesn't solve the long-term problem. And so if, in order to see an improvement overall, we really need to start focusing on what the roots of the problem are and be focused on solutions. Because this tactic that we're taking now, I agree, it's not working. And so we need to widen up what we think of as how to deal with these problems.
I appreciate you sharing your point of view on that. But I've seen people in Nordstrom Rack running out of store with a full cart of clothes, and security guy have to chase after them and wrangle it. And this person actually have the audacity to fight with the loss prevention person and blatantly attempt to get away with a shopping cart full of items. And I witnessed this. So crime like this is clearly not about being hungry, and it's clearly a crime of opportunity, because our community is not prosecuting or not arresting and not making example. So I see what you're saying, but it's not all simplistic as in just being hungry. And of course, we have social programs like Food Stamp and SNAP to support the indigents. So it's not necessarily they would go completely hungry. I mean, I'm an immigrant to this country, and I rely on social programs when I first started here, and I'm very appreciative of that. But to see society deteriorate and crimes increasingly become more blatant, and I feel like there's a certain momentum in this direction that I'm afraid for the progression of crime becoming more serious. And clearly, I appreciate that you're educating us and me about the level of prosecution that the city of Seattle handle, and not felony level. But yeah, I'm trying to focus on just that band of petty crimes that we're talking about. And a lot of people are tuning in to hear your point of view today. To talk about this, how you would help the city be a safer and better place to live if we choose not to prosecute certain crimes.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that, like, one thing I would point out is what you're talking about is a robbery. That's a robbery, and it is a felony. And so what I'm talking about is petty crime. And so, which, like, is not a robbery. So that's when I talk about crimes of poverty, when I talk about who's being prosecuted in Seattle Municipal Court, that's what I'm talking about. And so I think that there's this idea that there's the broken windows idea, that if we don't prosecute people at this lower level, it's going to turn into that larger crime. And that's largely shown to be a complete failure where it has been implemented. And I think the other piece is, there's a huge difference in what is going on in this country now versus, when I was a kid, or even when I first came to Seattle. Homelessness is a crisis. It's out of control. Like, we can all see it, and that is not because people aren't being prosecuted. And, like, people are living unsheltered because they don't have anywhere to live. They can't afford to live anywhere, right? And so when someone's living unsheltered, survival is not certain. You know what I mean? You can't, there's nowhere for you to sleep. There's nothing for you to eat. It's hard to find a place to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? There are some social programs that are helpful to a lot of people. Absolutely. But we live in a place where the social safety net is so deeply ruptured. And the idea that we can punish our way out of that is, it's not sound. I mean, we cannot keep punishing people for these petty crimes and expect that that's going to make things better. Because, like I was saying, 90% of these people can't afford a lawyer. These are not people that are, we're not talking about the enterprise crime, right?
Right.
Or that like brazen robberies or things like that. That's not what we're talking about for the city attorney's office. And so,
Totally understand. So let's talk a little bit very quickly about domestic violence and how you would decide what kind of cases to prosecute if elected into office. How would you decipher, would you still consider, prosecute domestic violence crimes?
It really depends. I mean, and that's true for any prosecutor. So every prosecutor has to take the cases that they're given and decide. They have prosecutorial discretion to decide what to file and what not to file. That would be no different for me. I would not say, and I have not said, that I would not file like any domestic violence crimes. My point of view is that there's a lot of victims of domestic violence that come into the system. Well, not all of them, and they cannot get their basic needs met. And the focus right now is on punishing abusers, which I'm not going to say does not have any value. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I am saying that if we really want people to be safe, I think it's time that we start giving them what they've been asking for a long time, which is housing, transportation, childcare, things that, like the way that a case comes in right now, it's filed and then there's a no contact order put in place. And then it's up to that family, like the abuser and victim, to figure out how they're going to now pay rent at two places, how they're going to figure out childcare when there's not two people in the house. Like how, you know what I mean? Like there's all of these.
How would we solve that? I mean, that's a family issue, but how would the city handle their part of it?
So I mean, we can expand victims services. Right now, there is a victims advocacy program within the city attorney's office, but it's predicated on prosecution. So if we open up that program to, first of all, have a place where people can go, like funding and resourcing community-based programs where people can go to get help with those issues instead of just calling the police, because there's a lot of people who don't feel comfortable calling police for these situations. And those people deserve to be safe as well. And so it's really about funding and resourcing community-based programs, and then also expanding victims services by the city. And there's, again, like we've tried doing things this way. We've tried to do things this way. And it's,
hasn't worked.
Yeah, I mean, it could work a lot better. I mean, I think we can just create a lot more safety for people, and that's what I'm concerned about.
Right.
Is that issue exactly? And so and also just one thing, for every misdemeanor domestic violence case, even if the person was to get the maximum sentence, they're going to get out of jail in less than a year.
Right.
So the question is, what kind of position is that person going to be in then? What kind of position is the rest of the family or the victims in this case going to be in? And we need to start focusing on that end result and not just like this really short-sighted, this is how we do it, one size fits all.
Okay, so if elected, I have to mention that we only have about 2-3 minutes left, and I have two more questions about about how you will improve the Seattle Municipal Courts, and also a quote that you mentioned on Twitter last summer. In the Seattle Times, they said that you tweeted, property destruction is a moral imperative. I want to hear you expand on it.
Sure. So first with Seattle Municipal Court, that is the court that the city attorney practices in. The city attorney collaborates in some ways with that court, but that I would not have dominion over that court, I guess. Okay. So like that court operates on its own. It's a separate thing from the city attorney's office. That tweet, I know it gets brought up a lot. And I mean, I think I've said this before, but like that was a time when it was, I think every 3 days, a person was being murdered by police. That was on camera. People were being shot in the back or being suffocated to death. It was like a really intense time where it just kept happening over and over and over again. Right. And what I saw people responding to was somebody broke a window. And that was like, and Twitter is a very inflammatory place.
Right.
But that's what I saw on the news. That's what I saw on social media. That's the thing that was being talked about over and over and over again, was like property destruction and wealthy people outside their mansions, like waving guns around, you know what I mean? And it was really, it seemed to me that people seemed to think that property was more important than life, which I think a lot of people do. And it was an answer to that.
Interesting. Well, thank you for elaborating on that statement. So I'm guessing that with that explanation, I suppose things could be taken out of context and quoted, and as discerning citizen, we have to understand the context behind the statements. And I appreciate that you sharing that with us today. Thank you very much for coming on Afternoons with Monique, Miss Nicole Thomas-Kennedy, who is running for Seattle Attorney Office. Good luck, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
You too. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
Bye.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not translating the lyrics of Boogie Oogie Oogie for board